The shriek of shattering glass echoed down the quiet suburban street, followed by the unmistakable metallic crunch of something very expensive being crushed. I froze at the end of the block, groceries still dangling from my hands, heart jackhammering in my chest. The sun glared off the jagged windshield of my McLaren 720S like it was winking at me in mockery. And there, like two demented statues brought to life, stood Linda and Brenda. Linda, floral pajama set, house slippers barely gripping the pavement, raised a sledgehammer over her head like she was starring in some low-budget horror movie. Brenda, identical in face but not in fabric, wore a stained tank top and gray sweatpants, so loose they flapped with each violent movement. Her bob haircut swung with a kind of twisted rhythm as she brought a crowbar down hard on the carbon fiber hood. The sound it made was wet and final, like a body hitting the floor. I didn't yell. Not yet. I couldn't even process the scene. My mind snapped back and forth like a rubber band stretched too thin, trying to make sense of it. Why? How? But more than anything, what the hell were they thinking? A small crowd had gathered. Phones were out, recording every swing, every shriek of metal. Linda bellowed over the chaos. This is what you get when you park your smug little spaceship in our neighborhood. Brenda chimed in, breathless but gleeful. Yeah, maybe now you'll get the message. And then she kicked the side mirror off like it owed her money. I finally found my voice. Are you out of your minds? They turned. And for a second, the air felt like it thickened, like the whole neighborhood had inhaled and forgot how to breathe. Linda's expression didn't falter. If anything, she looked satisfied. You shouldn't have disrespected us, she said coolly, like this was some sort of moral retribution. Brenda nodded beside her. You brought this on yourself. The sledgehammer slipped from Linda's hands and hit the asphalt with a loud, hollow thud. Brenda's crowbar followed a moment later. Both women stood like deranged soldiers who had just completed a holy mission. Sirens howled in the distance, getting closer. I took a slow step toward my destroyed car. The front end was caved in, the windshield spiderwebbed to the edges, doors scratched, hood dented beyond recognition. A crack ran through the McLaren emblem like a scar. My breath caught. I had owned that car for precisely 7 weeks. Flashback to day one. The McLaren arrived on a flatbed, wrapped like a high-tech Christmas gift. Matte black finish. Custom ceramic brakes. It had taken me 3 years of saving, freelancing, and eating dollar ramen just to afford the down payment. I didn't have kids, didn't do vacations. That car was my indulgence, my passion, my middle finger to every rejection email I'd ever received. The day I moved into my new home, I parked it proudly in the driveway. Garage was still crammed with unpacked boxes, but I wasn't worried. It was a quiet street, safe neighborhood, lots of dog walkers and retirees. What could go wrong? I met Linda and Brenda that same afternoon. They appeared without warning, standing at the end of my driveway like the opening scene of a nightmare I didn't know I'd ordered. You're the new neighbor, Linda said, eyes narrowed like she was peering into the sun. Nice car, Brenda added, emphasis so thick with sarcasm it nearly choked her. Did it come with an attitude? Hi, I replied, trying to sound friendly. Yeah, just moved in. And thanks. Linda crossed her arms, unimpressed. We've been here 10 years. This neighborhood has a certain standard. Brenda smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. And that thing? It attracts attention. I blinked. It's a car. Exactly, Linda said. And this isn't Rodeo Drive. It's a family neighborhood. Their 6-year-old brother, a chubby kid with chocolate on his face and a Buzz Lightyear toy clutched in his sticky hands, came bounding out from their yard and started kicking a soccer ball dangerously close to the McLaren. Hey, buddy, careful with that, I said, as gently as I could manage. He ignored me. Ball bounced off the curb, rolled right under the bumper. I stepped forward. Hey, seriously, watch the car. Linda's face twisted like I'd insulted her ancestry. Don't talk to him like that. He's just a child. Brenda swooped in to scoop the kid up like he was a wounded war hero. You don't get to parent our baby brother. That was my first warning. The next came less than 24 hours later. The car door handle was smeared with gum. Someone had scrawled "show off" in dust across the windshield. I stood staring at it, equal parts confused and irritated. Petty vandalism? In this neighborhood? I cleaned it off, said nothing. Maybe a fluke. The second warning came that evening. I returned from a short drive to find my driveway blocked. Linda's beat-up minivan was parked right across it. I knocked on their door, polite smile stapled to my face. Linda opened it halfway. "Hey, sorry to bother, but could you move your van?" She tilted her head. "Oh, you can't fit your little spaceship around it." I gave a dry chuckle. Not without hitting something. Her smile vanished. "You're the new guy. Maybe you should be the one to adjust." She slammed the door in my face. The following night, I heard a scratching noise. I peeked through my blinds and saw Brenda crouched beside the McLaren, dragging something sharp across the side panel. I bolted outside, but she was gone by the time I made it to the driveway. No usable footage. My motion sensor camera had glitched. I filed a police report. Nothing came of it. The morning after that, I woke to find my driver's side mirror cracked clean off and lying on the ground. Scrawled across the hood in sidewalk chalk, "Pride comes before a fall." That was the day I installed a proper dashcam. Hidden, high-res, full coverage. Later that afternoon, I saw the Karen sisters throwing a garden party like nothing had happened. Linda laughed with her wine glass raised like a queen holding court. Brenda posed for selfies with their little brother on her lap, captioning it "Family First" with a heart emoji. I approached them calmly, footage in hand. I explained the scratches, the mirror, the harassment. Asked, very politely, if they had any idea what was going on. Linda sipped her drink, feigned shock. "Oh no, such a shame. But maybe you should be asking yourself why these things keep happening to you." Brenda giggled. "Or who you ticked off with that smug attitude." They were enjoying this, feeding off the drama. I realized then I wasn't dealing with neighbors. I was dealing with suburban tyrants sugar-rushed on entitlement and HOA immunity. So I stepped back, watched, waited. 2 days passed. Then 3. Quiet. Too quiet. Then came the morning when my neighbor, Sarah, texted me a video. "Thought you'd want to see this. Happening right now." I clicked it, and there they were. Linda, Brenda, 2 middle-aged hurricanes of destruction. The video captured everything. Brenda yelling, "Let's see if it still drives now," as she cracked a headlight. Linda bellowing, "Teach him a lesson," like this was some divine crusade. I dropped everything and bolted. When I arrived, they were still going. The car was already ruined, but they kept swinging, like destruction itself gave them life. Police arrived seconds later, lights flashing, sirens screaming. Officers shouted. Weapons dropped. Hands up. Linda began wailing about self-defense. Brenda blamed emotional trauma. It was pathetic. It was pathetic. They were cuffed on the spot. As they were loaded into the back of the cruiser, Linda turned to me and spat, "You'll regret this." "You think this is over?" Brenda screamed. "This isn't justice. This is oppression." I didn't say a word. I stood by the wreckage, surrounded by shattered carbon fiber, dented panels, broken glass. The McLaren was dead, murdered in daylight. But as I looked around at the stunned neighbors, at the camera phones still recording, at the officers taking statements, I realized something. This wasn't the end. This was the beginning. They had made a show of breaking me. But in their arrogance, they hadn't even realized they'd just handed me the one thing I needed. Proof. And I was going to use it. The McLaren was gone within hours, hoisted onto a flatbed like a fallen champion, carried away under a thin blue tarp that did nothing to hide the carnage. I stood at the edge of the driveway, arms crossed, as the tow truck driver muttered something about what kind of lunatic does this in broad daylight. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The ache in my chest wasn't just about the car. It was the humiliation, the violation, the pure absurdity of the whole situation. This was supposed to be a fresh start, a new home, new street, peace and quiet. Instead, I was at ground zero of a suburban war. Linda and Brenda were released by the next morning. No jail time, no overnight hold, just paperwork and a signature. The officer who called me sounded apologetic, as if embarrassed by the system he worked for. "They've got no priors. Judge called it a misdemeanor with pending review. They'll be back home by noon. Sure enough, when I peeked out my window around lunchtime, there they were, Linda waddling up the walkway like nothing had happened, Brenda right behind her, face smug, slurping from a gas station smoothie. I could hear her laugh from inside my kitchen. Loud. Mocking. An hour later, a sheriff's deputy knocked on my door with a thick packet of paperwork. They're filing a harassment complaint, he said, looking vaguely disgusted. Claiming you threatened them. Said you emotionally destabilized their family unit. I blinked at him. You mean after they smashed my car? He nodded once. Yeah, it's stupid. But it'll go on record. Be careful. Careful. Right. That was my job now, tiptoe around lunatics with blunt instruments and delusions of grandeur. I called my insurance company. Told them everything. Sent the dashcam footage. The response came in less than 48 hours. We're sorry, but acts of intentional vandalism aren't covered unless the perpetrators are formally convicted in criminal court. You may pursue reimbursement through civil litigation. Translation, you're screwed. Try suing the Karens. So I did. I found a lawyer named Dion Patel, sharp, fast-talking, and clearly thrilled at the challenge. Let me guess, he said during our consultation, flipping through the police reports with a smirk. They're broke, belligerent, and believe they're victims. That about sums it up. I love these kinds of cases. He filed a civil lawsuit that afternoon, property damage, harassment, emotional distress. The works. We also sent a cease and desist letter, just to poke the hive. The next day, Brenda posted a video to Facebook titled, "Attacked by Neighbor for Defending My Family." In it, she fake cried about how I had threatened her innocent baby brother, how I had parked a weapon of status in a family neighborhood to intimidate them, and how she was suffering from vehicular PTSD. The video got 12 likes. 2 comments, both from Linda. But the damage wasn't in the post, it was in the tone. She wasn't scared. She was emboldened. They thought they were untouchable. I needed proof. Real proof. Something undeniable. That's when I got the DM. It came from a teenager named Miles who lived 3 houses down. He was known in the neighborhood for skateboarding at weird hours and having more GoPros than friends. Hey, the message read, I think I filmed the whole car smashing thing. Wanna check? I invited him over. He showed up 15 minutes later, hoodie half-zipped, camera in hand like a golden ticket. The footage was crystal clear. From his bedroom window, he had a perfect view of my driveway. It captured everything. The wild eyes, the insults, the gleeful destruction. At one point, Brenda even looked directly into the lens and said, hope he's watching this from whatever overpriced cafe he's crying in. I exhaled long and low. Can I use this? Totally, Miles said. Just blur my face if you post it. I did better than that. I clipped the best 30 seconds, added a caption, and uploaded it to TikTok with the hashtag Karen Smashdown. Within 8 hours, it had 100,000 views. By the next day, 2 million. It went viral. People stitched themselves reacting to Linda's rage face, compared Brenda's crowbar swing to a failed Mortal Kombat finisher, and remixed their screams into trap beats. One girl turned it into a mock trailer for a fake Netflix series called Suburban Warfare. But it wasn't just memes. Real momentum followed. News blogs picked up. Reddit threads exploded. Someone even dug up old Yelp reviews from Linda's failed candle business and revived them with fresh 1-star bombs. Then came the email. Hello, I'm with Channel 9's investigative unit. Would you be willing to go on record? I said yes. The piece aired 2 nights later. A full segment, Twin Terrors of Maple Avenue, when entitlement turns violent. They used the footage, blurred Miles' house, and left in every juicy line the twins had spat during their spree. That night, the Karens vanished. No lights on. Curtains drawn. Brenda's minivan sat in the driveway like a broken trophy. I thought maybe they'd learned. That maybe public shame had done what logic couldn't. I was wrong. They came back swinging, just not with hammers. I received a legal notice 3 days later. They were countersuing. Their lawyer was a sweaty man named Dennis Harlan, famous around town for defending men who claimed their speeding tickets were unconstitutional. He accused me of targeted public humiliation, claimed I incited digital mob violence, and that my dashcam installation had been a violation of shared neighborhood spirit. My lawyer, Dion, laughed so hard he had to mute the call. But I wasn't laughing, because in the midst of all this, the HOA had called an emergency meeting. I wasn't invited. Instead, I got a letter taped to my door. Please ensure future videos taken on your property do not violate HOA Rule 17b, unapproved surveillance distribution. I couldn't believe it. The same HOA that had ignored every previous complaint was now warning me for exposing vandals. I called the board president, a man named Franklin Hill, who wore bow ties even to trash day. "Franklin," I said, trying to stay calm, "you're warning me instead of them?" "It's not about sides," he replied, voice nasally and tired. "It's about harmony. The community is rattled because two women destroyed a supercar in front of half the neighborhood. Yes, well, they've been residents for a long time. People know them. And they've terrorized people for just as long." Silence. Then, reluctantly, he said, "You're not the first person they've upset." That stuck with me. I started asking around, quietly. The older couple across the street? Linda once reported them for having Halloween decorations up a day past November. The single mom on the corner? Brenda accused her of selling weed because she had aloe vera plants in her window. Another neighbor had his dog pooping on their lawn one time and found his tires slashed a week later. No one had proof, but everyone had stories. It wasn't just me, so I made a plan. I invited Miles over again and asked for all his footage, not just the car attack, but anything else he had from the past few weeks. Turns out, he had a treasure trove. Brenda yelling at a mailman. Linda screaming at kids riding scooters near her driveway. Footage of both of them digging through HOA mailboxes during the monthly newsletter drop. I compiled it into one clean, cinematic masterpiece, 10 minutes long, titled, "The Real Faces of Suburbia." I didn't upload it. Not yet. First, I sent it to the HOA board, directly to Franklin, with a single sentence, "You wanted harmony? Here's who's ruining it." Then I sent it to Dion, who gleefully updated our lawsuit with the new evidence. Then I waited. The silence was almost worse than the noise. No lights from the Karen house. No passive-aggressive chalk messages. No sideways glares at the mailbox. Just waiting. Until Friday morning. A knock came. Not a hard one, soft, deliberate. I opened the door and found Brenda standing there. No crowbar. No camera. Just her, clutching a manila envelope. Face red. Eyes puffy. "I came to apologize," she said. I didn't speak. She handed me the envelope. It's just medical bills. For our brother. He's got a condition. We were under stress. It wasn't right. What we did. But please don't ruin us." I stared at the envelope. Didn't open it. Behind her, Linda was watching from their front porch, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "I'm not the one ruining you," I said quietly. "You did that yourselves." Brenda opened her mouth, then closed it again. She turned and walked away, slow, defeated. I didn't watch her go. I closed the door, rested my forehead against the wood. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Dion. "Check your email," he said. I opened it. The HOA board had issued a formal censure of Linda and Brenda. They owed $25,000 in unpaid fines, and their voting privileges were suspended pending an internal hearing. The footage had been reviewed. Community opinion was shifting. The Karens were wobbling. One more push, and they'd fall. The HOA hearing was held in the community clubhouse on a muggy Thursday evening. The air inside was thick with tension, as though everyone knew something significant was about to happen but couldn't say it aloud. I arrived early, not out of eagerness but strategy. I wanted to see who showed up, who sat where, who glanced at me, and who looked away. The chairs filled slowly. Franklin Hill, still wearing that ridiculous bow tie, sat at the head of the panel table, flanked by 3 board members, all of whom had avoided eye contact the last time I crossed paths with them. A projector was set up, cable snaking toward a laptop that hummed softly, awaiting its cue. Linda and Brenda entered 10 minutes late. They swept in like royalty, cast out from their own court. Linda wore a faded leopard print blouse, clinging too tightly around her arms. Brenda followed, clad in a beige tracksuit that didn't quite hide the tremble in her steps. Neither spoke, but their eyes scanned the room with wounded pride, daring anyone to challenge their authority. Franklin cleared his throat. This is an internal disciplinary hearing regarding repeated violations of the HOA bylaws by residents Linda and Brenda Manning. A quiet cough from the back broke the silence. Miles sat in the third row, phone in hand, recording discreetly. I stood when my name was called. The lights dimmed. I didn't speak right away. Instead, I played the video, the 10-minute compilation I'd titled The Real Faces of Suburbia. It rolled without commentary. First, the infamous car destruction. Then Brenda screaming at the UPS guy for placing a box too loudly. Linda hurling insults at a group of Girl Scouts for trespassing. Footage of them rifling through HOA mailboxes. And finally, the crowning moment, Brenda on a phone call bragging, "They can't touch us. Franklin loves us. We're untouchable." The room was silent when it ended. Not angry. Not surprised. Just stunned. Franklin shifted uncomfortably. Ms. Manning, do you have any comment?" Linda stood abruptly, knocking her chair back. "This is a smear campaign. We've lived here longer than anyone in this room. We built this community." Brenda chimed in. "And this outsider strolls in with his luxury car and hidden cameras like he's some vigilante." A voice from the audience spoke up, soft but firm. "You keep my car in 2019. I never said anything." Another neighbor added, "You called animal control on my dog because he barked once." A third, "You tried to get my son banned from the pool." Like cracks in a dam, the voices kept coming, each one louder, angrier, more confident. Franklin called for order, but the momentum had shifted. The twins stood at the center of a circle they'd drawn themselves, surrounded by the ghosts of every petty act they thought they'd buried. An emergency vote was called. The board voted unanimously to fine Linda and Brenda $25,000 for HOA violations, destruction of property, and conduct unbecoming of residents. Their voting rights were revoked indefinitely. Their HOA privileges, community pool, gym, clubhouse access, were suspended. Linda gasped as though she'd been stabbed. "You can't do this." Brenda shouted, "This is persecution." But no one responded. They were no longer feared. They were finished. The next day, the criminal charges were finalized. Thanks to the viral video, the DA's office had ample evidence. Intentional destruction of private property, criminal mischief, harassment. A court date was set. They were officially being prosecuted. Dion was ecstatic. "We'll get damages," he promised, patting a stack of paperwork. "Not just for the car. For every sleepless night they gave you." He was right. The civil suit moved quickly. With the weight of public opinion behind us, the judge ruled in my favor. Linda and Brenda were ordered to pay $280,000 in damages and legal fees. They tried to file for bankruptcy. It was denied. Willful misconduct, the court ruled. Bankruptcy doesn't cover malicious acts. By the end of the month, their situation had deteriorated. Their aunt, who technically owned the house they lived in, was furious about the media attention and quietly put the property up for sale. It sold within 2 weeks to a young couple who ran an artisanal soap business and liked to play acoustic guitar on their porch. Linda and Brenda were evicted, forced to move into a relative's basement 2 towns over. The once proud queens of Maple Avenue now relegated to a cramped duplex with mismatched curtains and no central air. But I didn't gloat. Well, not much. I did buy a new McLaren, silver this time, sleeker, quieter, and somehow more intimidating in its silence. I parked it proudly in the driveway next to a small sign that read, "Protected by Karma and 4K dashcam." The neighborhood began to thaw. Kids played outside again. People waved as they walked by. Someone even left a small box of cookies on my porch with a note that read, "Thanks for cleaning house." One evening, about a month later, I sat out front with Miles. He'd brought his drone over, showing me some footage he'd taken of the neighborhood. We watched the sun set over clean streets and quiet homes. Peaceful. Until a delivery van pulled up. A man stepped out, holding a small package addressed to me. I signed, thanked him, and opened it as I sat back down. Inside was a single candle, cheap, lopsided, and poorly poured. A faded, label read, Lavender Serenity. Underneath it was a handwritten note, scrawled in rushed handwriting. You may have won, but you'll never belong here. Outsiders like you are just passing through. B. I stared at the note for a long moment. Then I lit the candle, watched it burn unevenly for a few seconds, and tossed it into the trash can beside me. I turned to Miles, who was watching silently. Still filming everything? I asked. He smirked. Always. Good. Just in case someone else wants to try and make their mark. He raised the drone into the sky. I looked up as it buzzed overhead, catching the street from above, each house calm, each yard quiet. The echoes of chaos, now just a distant memory. The twins were gone. Their reign had ended not in fire or fury, but in silence, in consequence, in the slow, deliberate application of truth. And as I sat there, hand resting on the hood of my new car, I realized I didn't need revenge to feel whole. I just needed peace. The neighborhood had changed, sure, but so had I. And if anyone ever dared try something again, let's just say the cameras were always rolling.